In this third video about Elder Joseph the Hesychast, I'm using yet another text, and it's this book about his spiritual child Haralambos, and we'll use this book to corroborate information that we already have and gain further details to supplement the picture that we've already formed. So, as we know, Haralambos' uncle was the Father Arsenius that joined the layman Francis, who was to become Elder Joseph the Hesychast. And in the world, this Father Arsenius, by the name of Anastasios in life, the reason he became the godparent to Haralambos was he wanted to become a godparent before Anastasius went to pursue monastic life himself, because there was a Pontian belief that unless you become a godparent, the Lord will put a stone in your embrace in the afterlife. So that's, anyway, carry on. More details. This book confirms Haralambos' whole family were adhering to the old calendar. And further, we also know, and this book confirms, that Haralambos wanted to become a monk, but he was pressured to remain in the old calendar cause. They wanted him to become a married priest, and that deferred his time to become a monk. Now, there's an incident worth mentioning. So in 1941, the German occupation, there were rebels, Greek rebels, that were joining, both Bulgarians and the Germans, and they were massacring everybody. And Haralambos was captured and sentenced to death by the rebels and the Bulgarians. They were in Drama, really close to the Bulgarian border. But he was delivered by a miracle of St. George. Okay, 1944, the other thing that was forcing Haralambos to defer his plans to become a monk was just before his father went into repose, his father Leonidas obliged Haralambos to become the head of the family and look after his younger brothers and so on, which Haralambos did until his brothers were finally graduated college. Now, another event, just leaping into the future before we come back, but it pertains to family matters, it's worth mentioning. After Elder Joseph's repose, so this is really late, this is 1961 now, our Father Haralambos, he went to Thessalonica to make his own mother a nun. Right. Now, let's go back. We know one unusual detail, that when our Haralambos became a monk, he actually kept his name Haralambos, and that is just an unusual thing, and that's worth knowing. Now, here's something personal that I want to say. In the first video in the series, I mentioned Elder Makarios of Skiti Maruda. Makarios was 16 or 17 years old, a teenager, and this is much later, but it's worth knowing. Elder Ephraim of Philatheu and Arizona, before he went to Philatheu, Elder Ephraim was at the Russian cell of St. Artemius from 1967 at Provata, and that's why I mentioned Makarios in that earlier video. And just personally, I had the honour of staying with this Elder Makarios for a week or so at Skiti Maruda. I was a stupid, awful novice from Serbia, but Elder Makarios hosted me very beautifully, and I wasted his blessings horribly. Right, back on track. Skipping ahead, okay, at the small skete of St. Anne, our Father Haralambos is a priest. It's worth knowing that he was doing daily liturgies there at the small skete of St. Anne, and that was from midnight, and of course to hours and hours and hours, because of all of the names to commemorate. Now, that's basically it, because the rest of this book is about Elder Haralambos rather than Elder Joseph the Hesychast. So I will just whiz through, but it is worth reading this book to get the full picture there. So we know that the Brotherhood went from the Small Skeet of St. Anne to New Skeet from 1953 until Elder Joseph the Hesychast proposed in 1959. And then our Elder Haralambos had his own brotherhood of 5 members that went to 1967. But anyway, just coming back to when the brotherhood moved to New Skeet, I've got the maths here. I don't have the names. 7 brothers were joined by 3 more. There were 10 brothers. I mentioned one chapel to St. John the Baptist. They actually had 2 chapels at New Skeet, one to the Mother of God. And their occupation there at New Skeet was making prosphora seals. All right. More details that I'm going to whiz through. But before Elder Joseph the Hesychast proposed, he did bless his spiritual children to form their own brotherhoods and report formally to Father Arsenios. Right, what happened there? From 1967 to 1979, they went to Buraziri, and I think this was a dependency of Khilandar. It's worth knowing that in 1967, there was a military coup in Greece, and Mount Athos was administrated by a retired general appointed by the military, and there was a brief 3-month stint of Elder Haralambos' brotherhood at Xenophontos in 1975, and then in 1979, Elder Haralambos went to the monastery of Dionysium. And the last couple of points. So towards the end of his life, he reposed in 2001. He was having heart attacks, and he used to go fishing because fishing was a remedy for heart attacks. And he used to send fish that he caught to Papa Ephraim of Katonakia. And that must have... Oh, anyway. Next point. So Elder Haralambos reposed in 2001. He had been taken to hospital in Thessalonica, and but he reposed there, and it meant that even lay people, women, could venerate him. And then he was transferred to the monastery of Dionysium back on Mount Athos.